r/ask Reddit. Teachers of Reddit, what's the weirdest, craziest thing you've caught a student doing? I teach high school and was feeling really unwell in the middle of a 100-minute lesson with the worst year 10 class I've ever had. I was super dehydrated and asked one of the rougher boys to make a run to the canteen to get me a bottle of water. I had no cash on me, so I gave him a note to the effect that they should put it on my tab. He disappeared, and it was over 40 minutes before he returned, and I assumed he'd just taken the opportunity to skip out on class. He arrives though, with a 2-liter bottle of water. I begin to ask him where it had come from, assuming he'd been up to the staff room or something, and he says, "Miss, you were really thirsty, so I wanted to get you a big old drink." Right, but where did it come from? You looked really thirsty. You went to the supermarket, didn't you? How did you pay for it? Let's not tell anyone about this. Okay, it was a 20-minute walk to the supermarket. He'd also stolen me some painkillers in case I had a headache. I caught a bunch of 2nd grade boys passing a pornographic image back and forth. Once I confiscated it, they then attempted to sneak under the table and look up my address. 2nd graders. One time I caught a kid stuffing popcorn into the CD drive of the computer he was using. He couldn't explain why. I'm a middle school teacher. I had a female student who masturbated daily by rubbing her hands over her pants. She would zone out, mouth hanging open and glassy-eyed. After a month or so I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was freaked out, and I was afraid the other students would catch on and destroy her social status. I took her out of the room, asked her if she had an infection and needed to see the nurse. She asked me why, and I told her that there was no other explanation for why she was constantly rubbing herself. She said she didn't itch. I told her to stop rubbing herself at school because that is something she should do in private, and to let me know if she needed to see the nurse. She never rubbed herself with her hands again. Instead, she figured out how to use the edge of her chair. She would put one leg way back behind her chair and the other one out in front and just rock away, with no shame whatsoever. My mom is a secretary at my old high school, and a couple months ago she had to write up this idiot freshman for bringing a homemade tattoo gun to school. He was charging $40 per tattoo, a $40 tattoo you got in the handicapped bathroom stall. But it's okay, because he brought an antibacterial wet wipe, just one, and some weed. All in all, I'm shocked they shut him down. It sounded pretty legit. How can we believe that our schools are doing their job for our children when they are actively preventing them from starting their own businesses? Studying, several days prior to the exam. This is the only non-dirty thing I have seen in this thread so far. I am a student and yet this was the only response that made me go WTF. I have this kid who has sensory issues. He loves to play with paper, especially little tiny pieces. It can get annoying when I'm trying to teach and he's playing, but it helps him chill out, so I usually ignore it. One day he forgot to turn in a paper that we worked on in class, so I just went over to his desk to get it out. So much paper. Thousands of little scraps crammed everywhere. His desk was jammed full. He must have been collecting for a while. Then I notice the spare desk next to him is full of paper too. But this paper is folded into ornate origami bugs. Probably 100 origami bugs. Then I notice an art box in that desk, so I take it out. Inside is dead real bugs. A lot of them. He must have been picking them up off the floor for the whole year. I just put it back and didn't say anything, but had him clean out his desk the next day. He cried the whole time, even though I told him he could use the extra desk, and then bit me. That was a long school year. Also, caught the class president with 600 Ritalin and a bottle of vodka in her backpack, and found out she'd been prostituting herself for a couple months for cocaine. And then there was the heroin addict in grade 11. Oh. And the girl who made 4 serious suicide attempts in 1 year. Boarding school. And lastly, the kid we caught making her own porn and uploading it to the internet. Grade 10. Spelling edit. A fellow teacher looked across the room during grade 6 social studies and saw a female student giving a male student a hand job. I didn't even know how sex worked until like 7th grade. This was a catch in my school. One day, a kid brought in little blue pills his dad had hidden away. All the little monkeys thought it would be a great idea to take this unknown drug. Remember they were about 13-14 years old, as it would make class much more fun. Turns out it was Viagra, made the national news and everything. Not a teacher, and not a masturbation story. In one of our classes, each student would take turns seeing how long they could stand at the pencil sharpener, sharpening their pencil, before the teacher would notice and tell them to sit down. Record was 32 minutes. I went to a very small private school, thus the whole class was comfortable with each other and in on the scheme. We also named the class Frog, Merkin, son of Merlin. I was teaching kindergarten. A girl had this hippie mom who was a strict vegetarian. Wouldn't let her daughter have any meat. One day after lunch this little girl had her face buried in her backpack. She had stolen chicken wings from the cafeteria. When I took her bag away the bottom was filled with chicken bones. I was teaching 8th grade when I turned around and saw a student standing over another on all fours, hitting his back. The thing that prompted me to turn, him moaning hit me harder. I told them to stop, and that behavior is not appropriate for school. Later the same student straight up told me he was a masochist. I was like, in my head, no shit, Sherlock. I'm not a teacher, but in my freshman Spanish class another student was so stoned on Vicodin that he lit his arm on fire in class with a lighter and Axe body spray to prove to his friend how high he was. I taught English in a small Chinese city for a year. There was a kid in one of my classes who was never allowed to sit down. Ever. Every single week I would go in and he alone would be standing the whole time in a class of 60. At first I blew it off and thought the kid was just weird. But after a couple weeks I asked the students what the deal was. Turns out the kid got busted for skipping class and trying to solicit prostitutes in the middle of the day. I teach in Japan and it's pretty fun. I have one student who saw me teaching a 9th grade class that wasn't his. But when he saw me, he decided to just enter and plop into the chair and join the class. Same kid also pulled out speakers and started playing singing J-pop in the back of the classroom when the main teacher was speaking. Just 30 minutes ago, I saw a kid biking down the hallway while a teacher yelled at him. The teacher started yelling, but then stopped because he was so surprised that they brought a bike inside the school. My history teacher walked into the boys' bathroom and saw a guy getting peed on. Edit. Not in mutual agreement. The guy peed on him without permission, and he ended up being given a school suspension. Teacher of mine told me she once caught a student getting a blowjob in one of the corners of the school where the cameras couldn't see you. She said she told them pull up your pants and go to class. They got off rather easy if you ask me. During 6th grade, 2 students were caught performing oral sex on each other. They were both special needs students. During a read aloud, this one particular girl, one of those prissy girly girls divas, came up to me and asked to go to the bathroom. We had literally just gotten back in from a restroom break. She started jumping and acting like she was trying really hard to hold it in. So, I let her go. 10 or so minutes later she comes back. The entire class is focused on me and it is dead quiet. She proceeds to explain to me how her butt exploded and she didn't know why. The rest of the class was equally WTF'd. She kept going into weird details before I was able to finally quiet her for her dignity's sake and to go sit down. That was odd. Found a kid on his hands and knees, rubbing a sodden bathroom floor with paper towels, weeping because he couldn't get it dry. A kindergartner was chronically dry humping girls. Parent conference reveals that his dad had started showing him porno so that he would know what to do. A group of 3rd grade girls got into the habit of braiding each other's hair. One problem child started forcibly giving other girls ponytails. Same kid later handed me a math quiz with duck you written across the top. Not a teacher, but someone was jacking off in the classroom. A classroom with a full class. You would hear this thumping on the desk from this person for like 3 minutes then suddenly stop. Everyone knew. My mom had to separate 2 students having sex in the restroom. Today I learned I went to a ducking boring school. My friend did her teaching placement at a Catholic school over the summer. In the special ed classroom, there were 2 mentally disabled kids that were habitual masturbators. The girl would go to the staff washroom to relieve herself, but the boy had a tent in the back of the classroom, and he would go there for his special time, with all the other kids continuing on with their daily curriculum. as this was a daily occurrence. Not a teacher, but in my freshman year a kid tried to go to the bathroom and the teacher said he couldn't. He looked at her and said, "You sure?" And she told him to sit down. She continues teaching and he goes back to his desk and starts rummaging through his bag. He pulls something out and walks to the back of the room, goes to the corner, and starts pissing in a bottle. Everyone is staring at him at this point. When he finished, he started walking towards the front, grabs his bag from his desk, and sets the bottle of piss on the teacher's desk, walks out the door and says, "I'll be in the office." I'm not a teacher, but I've sat next to someone during lecture looking at porn in the middle of class. Front row. He shall forever be known as Noob Freshman. Shit, and all this time I thought I was being so subtle when I masturbated in class. This story was told by one of my teachers. At my school we had a unit for the kids with disabilities and special needs, Downs, Asperger's and physical disabilities like blindness. Anyway, there was this couple. I think they both had Downs and they would just randomly break out and have sex in random places all over the school. Teachers were constantly breaking them up. One day one of our teachers was walking towards an outdoor courtyard when school had let out and saw this couple getting it on right in the middle of the courtyard, on the wooden dais reserved for plays. The teacher went to go break it up but then decided she just couldn't be bothered with that noise and left them to it. Can't say I blame her. On my teaching practice at a large sixth form college, I was sitting at the back observing a lesson while at the front a rather spotty teenager was finger banging the girl sitting next to him. She was loving it. When I was in the 9th grade, 14 years old, I saw my crush masturbating during a movie. She was wearing overalls and it was cold in the room, so she put her arms in the overalls. She sat one desk up and over and was between me and the screen. Her hands were under the desk inside overalls and I could see them moving. When her orgasm hit, she put her head down and was shaking. It is still one of my best memories from high school. BTW, I came at the same time, but being 14, did not need to touch myself to do it. Totally took me by surprise. We had a group of autistic students out shopping at the local grocery market when one boy spotted a girl he particularly liked, started masturbating under his clothes right there, making eye contact and all. By the time I caught him he had finished, then looked down at his hand covered in goo, and yes, lapped it up. I teach geography to 15-16 year olds and a few years ago I was feeling really tired so decided to rest my eyes while the students were watching an educational video about tectonic activity. Of course, I ended up falling asleep and woke up 40 minutes later to see two of my students kissing and a group of 5-6 students playing cards, one of which was unironically smoking a tobacco pipe like a 70-year-old man. Smearing his fesses on a bookshelf. The Adventures of Pre-K Special Ed. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.